Hello everybody, and welcome to my video about changing your acoustic guitar strings. Alright, before we begin, there's a couple of things that you're going to need in order to do this job. So let's take a look. Alright, so the first thing you're going to need is obviously some new guitar strings, okay? The particular brand that I'm using comes in a box like this, and just a note on choosing the kinds of strings that you might like, you'll see there's a thing called a gauge, okay? Now these are called Pro Light, which is just a name that this brand will use for this particular gauge of strings, right? And they go from 11, 14, 22, 30, 36, and 50. Okay, that's in thousandths of an inch. Typical to refer to guitar strings by the lightest strings gauge. So in this case, we would call these 11s because the lightest gauge is 11 thousandths of an inch. Typically for acoustic guitar strings, you're going to be going somewhere between 11s, 12s, or 13s. A lot of people use 13s, and the higher the numbers, the thicker the strings, the more tension there is on the strings as you're playing. Okay, and the lighter the strings, the less tension there is. So that's just a personal preference, just to let you know. It's important to note that you need to know which string is which inside the box. So on the front, it tells you here which string is which in terms of its diameter, in other words, the gauge. And then from there, this particular brand pops them into 3 bags inside the box. Okay, these 3 bags will be labeled, and each bag has got 2 strings in it. It'll tell you that's the first string or the 4th string. And in most cases like this, the first string is plain steel, the 4th string is wound. Okay, if I look at the next box up, the 2nd string is going to be plain steel, and the 5th string is going to be wound again. Okay, and then the last one, these are both going to be wound strings, the 3rd and the 6th string. But you'll see once we open up that box that the 3rd string is going to be very, very small compared to the 6th string. If we take a look on the front of the box, our 3rd string is 22 thousandths of an inch, and our 6th string is 50 thousandths of an inch. Okay, so it's more than double the thickness, so you won't get them confused, I promise. Once we have our strings, you're going to need some kind of tools to remove the strings from the guitar. Okay, so the first job is to wind them off of the tuning pegs. You can do this by hand, there's nothing wrong with that. It just takes a little bit more time, but something that makes your life easier and quicker is to use something like this called a string winder. Okay, it's literally just a little tool that winds your tuning pegs. Okay, in the case of this particular tool, it has a little string peg remover on the end of it, but this one is broken. So I'm going the old-fashioned way, which is our next tool, not next in line, but our next tool that we would need is a set of spoons. Okay, you'll see how I use these later on, but we use these to remove the pins from the guitar that hold the strings in place. Not necessary if your string winder has got a good condition pin puller at the end. Mine has been broken, unfortunately. Okay, then once we've got our strings back in place, we're going to need to trim off the excess of the strings. So we need a pair of side cutters like this, and a small pair like this is nice because it means that I can work fairly close into the neck, and into the tuning pegs without damaging my guitar too much. And before we get to putting strings on, we're also going to take some time to actually clean our guitar a little bit today. In order to do that, we've got a microfiber towel to clean off some of the dirt and grime. You can also use some soapy water in conjunction with this if your guitar is really dirty. And then we also have some lemon oil. Okay, this is available at your music stores. The lemon oil and some paper towel to apply it is there to oil the exposed or natural wood finishes on the guitar. All right, once we've got everything in place, all the tools that we need to grab a guitar. So let's get these out the way and show you the very last thing, which you've actually been looking at the whole time now, but I haven't spoken about it yet. And that is this lovely mat in front of me. Okay, you can buy a mat like this for working on an instrument or working on a guitar, and it's got a little post that sticks up and a nice cradle for your guitar neck. Okay, in this case, I'm using a desk mouse pad. All right, this is a very big desktop mouse pad. And what I've done is I've taken an old camping mattress and I've glued together some layers and cut out a little shape to hold my neck. And so this cost me all of nothing because I found the camping mat in the garage. You'll actually find that if I'm doing this myself, I'm actually using the rest of the camping mat as this mat as well. But it is a little bit dirty and it's a little bit wobbly and wonky. So for the sake of doing this on camera, I decided I would use my nice desktop mouse pad. Okay, let's grab the guitar, show you how it fits in there, and we can jump right in. Okay, so you'll see what happens now is the guitar is sitting nicely on my desk or on my table. The guitar body is on the mat, so it's not going to get damaged. The neck is being held nice and securely with my little ramp over here. I have easy access to all my tuners. I have easy access to my pegs, easy access to my strings, absolutely everything I could need to change the strings on this guitar. So now that we're ready to get going on changing our strings, let's jump into it. So, as you can see, on an acoustic guitar, the strings go through the body of the guitar, okay, and they're held in place by these plastic pins. From there, they go over the bridge piece, okay, which is this little plastic piece over here. They run across the neck and the body of the guitar, across the nut over here, the top of the guitar, or the top of the neck, should I say. And then from the nut, they go into the tuning pegs. These tuning pegs will usually be 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom for an acoustic guitar. Very similar to an electric guitar. Sometimes though an electric guitar has got all 6 on one side. Okay, and it's very important to note that because this is a right-handed guitar, these are going to turn opposite to what you think. Usually when you're working with screws and bolts and nuts and things, you're going to learn the adage of a lefty loosey, righty tighty. In the case of tuning pegs, it's going to be the opposite way around. Because you're working with your left hand, it's going to be lefty tighty, which will make the strings go up in pitch. And it's going to be righty loosey. Okay, and the reason for that is just so that it's easier to work with your left hand, and it always just has been that way on every guitar I've ever played. Okay, you'll also find that because these are on opposite sides of the neck, they will turn in opposite directions so that you're actually always turning your hand the same way. Okay, now instead of doing this all by hand, remember we have a string winder, and I'm going to take my string winder and I'm going to unwind these strings until they come out of the tuning pegs over here. Let me show you one and let's go for it. Alright, you can hear the pitch goes all the way down until it doesn't even work anymore. Okay, so we're going to wind it all the way out. Okay, and you can hold on to the string here so that it doesn't go flying anywhere or scratch or damage your guitar or anything like that. Now, I've got the end of the string. It is still attached by the pin over here on the right, but you can see it has been removed from the tuning peg on the left over here. Okay, we'll take a closer look at how this tuning peg works when we put the new strings on. Okay, so the way I do this is I go and I remove every string from the headstock or from the tuning pegs over here, and then I will come and work over down here on the bridge. Okay, so let's remove all the strings as we go. Okay, now in order to remove these pins that hold the strings in place, there are a number of ways to do it, and the first way that you should come across is on your string winder. You'll find somewhere along the line there's a little tool to do it, like a set of jaws. Okay, but as you can see on my tool here, it's actually broken, and that wasn't me. I did lend this to somebody and it came back like that, so that's unfortunate. I know this tool works like that. Some other tools have got that little cutout on the edge of this part that winds on the tuners, so you can scoop out the pins like that. But if you want to go the old-fashioned way, remember we had our spoons. Okay, now being very, very careful, because this is a guitar, an instrument that we want to look after, even though this is not my main nice guitar, this is my traveling guitar, but still, we want to be nice to it. So what you can do is you can take the spoons and you can create the jaws, and what I tend to do is I tend to flip the spoons up this way in order to remove this pin. Now this can be a little tight, and there are some techniques to getting it out if it is too tight, but there you can see it starts to come, and as soon as it comes loose, you can actually pull it out with your fingers. Sometimes it also helps to push the string in, because the string is causing the friction that holds the pins in place. So if you push the string in, there the pin comes out just like so. And you can see there's a tiny little slot in the pin, which is where the string runs down into the middle of the pin and causes the whole assembly to be stuck inside of your guitar. There you can see that's the kind of thing that's going to happen inside the body of the guitar where the string comes out. Okay, and it's this pit over here that's going to cause the pressure to keep it in place. Alright, so there's one out. Let's do the rest. Now, while we have the guitar this far apart, it's time to take a little bit of care of it, okay? Being my everyday traveling sort of companion guitar that this is, it takes a little bit of a beating, so it does need some attention. So what we found with our tools, we've got our microfiber towel and we've got our lemon oil. All right, if you look at your guitar and if you look at this guitar as well while you're doing this, you will notice that some parts have got a very shiny finish, something like this, as well as up here at the head. The back of the guitar is a similar story. But some things have a more matte finish, a more sort of a raw wood finish, which is things like your fingerboard. Okay, some guitars do have lacquer, which is this shiny finish on the fingerboard, but most of them don't. Okay, so you've got sort of a natural wood finish on the fingerboard, and in this case, on this guitar, we've got a natural wood finish on this bridge over here. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to oil those periodically, okay, because this wood does dry up. Okay, just like any furniture that needs furniture oil, or outdoor wooden structures that need oiling periodically, so your guitar also needs that, just to keep the wood in tip-top shape. What can happen is that the wood dries out and it starts cracking and becomes damaged like that, and we can avoid that by just making sure that it gets oiled regularly. Okay, in the case of this guitar or any guitar that you use fairly often, I would recommend maybe every 6 months. If you use your guitar sort of less frequently than that, perhaps once a year or so is good enough. Okay, before we get to the oiling though, let's give this a good clean. All right, sometimes I would use just soapy water and just wet a cloth in order to clean it, although this guitar isn't too bad. It's got a little bit of marks and dust all over it, but we're just going to literally dust the guitar off. All right, and there, just quickly, just a note, remember this bridge can come off, and if you do take it out like I just did, take note that it only goes in one way. Okay, you'll see that it's got a shape to it. These two top strings have actually got opposite ends to them, so there's a little shape to the bridge at the bottom over there. We're going to talk more about this bridge in a second, but I'm going to take it out and I'm going to pop it over here with my pins for now. Now that we've given our guitar a bit of a dust, it's time to use the lemon oil. Okay, so we're going to take a piece of just ordinary paper towel. Okay, and we're going to fold it over a few times. Okay, something like that. You can use a paper towel or you can use a rag, whichever suits you. Bearing in mind that a paper towel is abrasive, so be careful, like when I was polishing now, be very careful that you don't polish too much with a paper towel because it is actually abrasive. It would be better to use cloths for that. But in terms of the oil, what I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt a tiny little bit of oil on the edge of my paper towel here. All right, there you can see just a little squirt of lemon oil on my paper towel, and it smells lovely. That's why I like to use lemon oil. Let's start at the back over here with our bridge plate. Okay, and I'm just going to wipe the oil on, and you can see it change color there as the oil soaks into the guitar. Or into the bridge plate, should I say, not the whole guitar. Okay, there we go. We can go along the top edge here too. This is where you've got to be careful not to get it all over the shiny lacquer finish of your guitar. Okay, and there you can see my bridge is nice and oiled. I would then take a dry side of the paper towel and just give it a wipe just to get rid of the excess that you don't want all over your fingers. There we go. And now, very similarly, I'm going to go across the entire fretboard on every fret and just make sure that it's nice and oiled. Okay, don't know if I need any more oil yet. Let's just see what happens here. For a guitar that hasn't been done for a while, perhaps as well, it would be a good idea to leave the oil in place for a little bit before you wipe away the excess, because you might find that it needs a little bit more than a sort of a regular top-up job like we're doing here. So maybe leave it for 5 or 10 minutes and then come and wipe away the excess. Now that our guitar is clean and oiled and ready for some new strings, it's time to install them. All right, the moment we've been waiting for. Okay, you can see they are wound together actually, but it's very obvious which one is which because one is wound and one is not wound. Okay, so I know the unwound string, and be careful when you do this because sometimes they come apart and they can hit your guitar, they can hit your face. Anyway, like we say, we got the correct strings. Now I'm going to pop it in the hole. All right, you can see the little ball end. Put it, look, it's the black background here. The little ball end that holds it in place. You're going to pop that inside the hole, and you're going to pop the pin over it, and making sure that the slot in the pin goes over the string. Okay, then you're going to push the pin into place. You can hear it squeaking or creaking into place there. At the same time, you're pulling up on the string to make sure that the string seats as high up as possible. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with my D string. So there my pin is in place, my string is in place. Let's get some more strings. Again here I tend to put all of the strings in place on the bridge. There we go. And just to double check to make sure all my pins are in place, and now I'm ready to go and start to pull the strings through the tuners. Okay, so it's time to install our strings in the tuners. All right, a couple of things to take note of on our way there. Make sure that the strings are in place and that your pins are in place as well. And while you're installing these strings, we'll make sure that those pins don't start popping out. If they do, just push them back in. Okay, so if they're still a little bit loose and the string starts to come up to tension, sometimes they can push those pins out. So make sure that you check that out and make sure that that's not happening. Also, as the string goes across the bridge that we put in, make sure the bridge is there. Remember, I took the bridge out, but make sure that the string goes across the bridge and that there's nothing on the bridge that's going to catch the string or start to cut the string or anything like that. Make sure it's nice and smooth. There may be a tiny little groove for the string to sit in, which is fine, but make sure that that groove is not too big so that the string falls all the way into the groove where it can start to bind or it can start to cut on the string itself and cause the string to break. Okay, so if that is the case and your bridge is damaged, you would need to replace it. The same story goes for my nut over here. Okay, you can see in this case on the nut there are some bigger grooves over here for the strings to go in. All right, but again, make sure that there's nothing causing these grooves to pinch or bind on the strings as they go through, and make sure that this nut is nice and tight. Usually the nut is glued in, sometimes the bridge is loose. If this nut is loose, it should be glued in and repaired. Okay, so having said that, let's start putting on some strings. Okay, I'm going to take my high E string, I'm going to follow it from the bridge and run my finger down and grab it over there. Okay, and I'm going to insert it through the hole in my tuning peg. So each of these tuning pegs has got a hole through the center where the string can go through like that. Okay, it's important to note the string must go from the inside outwards. Okay, it doesn't go this way, it goes that way. Okay, and this is so that the string winds onto the peg in the correct orientation. All right, now how much string are we going to leave on here? Well, I like to have a little 3-finger rule. So I put my 3 fingers up on the bridge and I pull this string tight until I've got about 3 fingers worth of slack. Okay, what I can do then is I can start to wind this string on. Okay, just doing the first one very carefully by hand so I can show you what I mean. All right, what happens now is that this part of the string starts to wind around with the string winder. Okay, with the peg as the string is going around. And what I like to do is I like to take the first loop of this to go under my string. Okay, this is just a method that I sort of have been using my entire life. No one ever taught me this, but this is the way I do it. Okay, so I'll make sure that this excess of the string goes underneath the loop for the first rotation. Okay, then once it's all the way around and I start coming around again, I'm going to lift this excess up. In fact, sometimes I just bend it up like this. And now I'm going to wind the string towards the bottom of the string peg. Okay, or the tuning peg. Or the string tuner. All right, depending on what you want to call it. And as it goes around, you'll see we will get around 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 loops of string around the tuner, okay, before it starts to get tight. And I just like to hold it nice and flat like this so that it all winds on. There's no overlapping going on. It's all winding up and stacking nicely on top of itself, or underneath itself, should I say. And eventually we get to the point where it's tight enough to start making a note. Okay, we're not going to tune it just yet. It's just in place. Now, be careful of your eyes with these excess pieces of string flapping around. And in fact, it's a good idea to cut that off right here. Okay, so we're going to grab our side cutters and we're going to cut that off, and we're going to leave about 1/2 centimeter behind. Okay, be careful that you don't cut the wrong part of the string. Make sure that you cut the excess, and there it goes. Okay, and then I also like to just take this little nub now and just bend it where it's not going to stab anybody. All right, so now we've got 2 or 3 windings around that tuning peg, and we've got a little bit of tension on the string. It's not enough, it's nowhere near in tune yet, but it's enough to hold it in place. Okay, it's in my little slot for the string on my nut. It's in the slot for my string on my bridge at the back over here. And we are ready to rock and roll. And it's going in the right direction. You'll always see the string needs to come onto the inside of the peg and move outwards. Okay, the strings always go towards the outside. Okay, let's do another one. And now my guitar has new strings on it. Now that we have our strings on, just a quick reminder, when you wind your strings on, make sure that the pins don't walk out or come out as they're coming in. If they do, just give them another little push to push them in. Make sure that the strings are in every little groove that they need to be in on the bridge. Make sure that they're in each groove on the nut. Make sure that they wind from the inside outwards as you're winding them on. And remember, put the first loop on top of the excess and every other loop thereafter underneath the previous loop. Okay, and we should have our guitar strings in. Now it's time to tune our guitar, all right, and make sure that we are ready to play. So I've got a little tuner sitting on the side of the guitar over here, so I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to play every string and get it up in tune. This can be quite scary, especially if the strings are very far away from their tuning that they need to be in. And as you're tuning up, remember that each consecutive string is going to add more and more tension to the neck over here, and it's going to start to pull the neck up. And as it does that, the strings that you've already tuned are going to go out of tune as well. So you need to go over it a few times to make sure that it's perfectly in tune. Now, as we say, we don't want to be perfectly in tune yet because we're going to give it another little tweak before we finalize the tuning. So what I like to do to make sure that the string is pulled through correctly here by the pins and make sure that it's not sitting and binding in any of the nut or the bridge or the nut, is just to give it a little pull and a little stretch. Okay, you can pull fairly hard on them. Alright. Okay, and that will mean that the string will settle down a little bit and it will go down a few cents in tuning. You can hear, so I've got to come up again. And there we go. E, A, D, G, B, E. Done. And our guitar is ready to play. Now, it's important to note at this point, you've got nice new strings on your guitar. It's nice and clean. It's got a nice freshly oiled neck and a nice freshly oiled bridge over here. It's a very happy guitar, except just like you, it now wants to play. All right, so don't leave your guitar lying in the cupboard or under the bed or in its case somewhere in the attic or wherever. Get out and play it. Make sure you use it and let it make some music, because that's what it was made to do and that's what it wants to do. All right, thank you everybody. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, thanks for watching my video. If you've enjoyed it, please share it, give it a like, and consider subscribing for more. I teach various styles of guitar online and offer affordable packages that are available worldwide. While others will sell you a follow-along course where you're left to learn on your own, I believe in dedicated one-on-one interaction where I can tailor the instruction to suit your needs, your learning style, and your progress. If you'd like to know more about my online guitar school, please visit my website. The link is in the description below, along with my other social media links. Thank you, and have a great day.